75 colonial militia, many armed only with sticks and scythes. Earlier in the day, they had been citizens tending to their fields, but in an instant they were transformed into revolutionary soldiers. Their commander was Captain John Parker, who reportedly told his Minutemen as they were called, "Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." It was then that the shot heard round the world started the Revolutionary War and changed forever the history of the world. But more importantly, it started the American tradition of the citizen soldier that survives today. The ordinary citizen being asked to do the extraordinary in defense of liberty. It is a tradition that is being followed in our defense today as we stand here by our brave men and women who have answered the call to arms. From Lexington Green to Gettysburg, from Flanders Fields in World War I to the beaches of Normandy in World War II, from the frozen turf of the Incheon Reservoir in Korea to the smoldering jungles of Vietnam, and from the billiard table-like battleground of Desert Storm in Iraq to the mysterious and deadly mountain passes of Afghanistan today, there has been one constant: the citizen soldier, the man or woman who drops what they are doing to defend the greatest nation in the history of the world. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things in defense of the United States of America. These are the people we assemble to honor today. In my family, the citizen soldier tradition started in 1942 with my father, First Lieutenant Howard O'Neill, United States Army Air Corps. His favorite line from the war was that the first time he saw the Atlantic Ocean, they told him to fly over it. They went from the Florida Keys to South America to Africa and on to the oil fields of Ploesti on May 18, 1944. The now famous 773rd Airlift Squadron, United States Army Air Corps. They started in Benghazi. They flew to Libya, to Romania at treetops. You youngsters, look up at those trees. When I say treetops, I am talking about airplanes at 200 miles an hour coming in at that height. In one day, they destroyed 40% of the fuel supply of the Nazi armies. But as always, they demonstrated that freedom is not free. It wasn't without extraordinary cost. In all, of the 163 bombers from the 5 bomb groups that reached their target, only 89 made it back to Benghazi. The following day, only 33 of these were deemed fit to fly. Casualties for the 1,700-man force that had flown into hell were heart-rending. Nearly a third of the crews failed to return, with more than 300 dead, 140 captured. Of those who did come home, more than 440 were wounded. 5 Congressional Medals of Honor were awarded that day, more than any day in the time in the history of the United States. My father was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross that day. I carry it in his honor today. Life magazine took a picture of his plane because it certainly was not fit to fly. Like many citizen soldiers, my father came home, married his high school sweetheart, raised his kids, and 20 years later he showed that he was a true liberal. He permitted me to choose which branch of the military I was going into. I went off to Vietnam, where you've heard I was awarded the Bronze Star. What I did was not important. What we did together is. I was the leader of a 10-person unit. We moved around a lot, and we all came home safely, and by my definition, that's a successful story. I married, started my career in Geneva, Ohio, went to law school on the GI Bill, ended up with my best friend from Vietnam, joined me in the practice of law, Tom Brown, and it was amazing how the citizen soldier story followed us. His father had been First Lieutenant Richard Brown. The memorial in Geneva is named after him. He was awarded the Silver Star on D-Day at Normandy. Like father, like son, Tom served with me in Vietnam, and his son, Nicholas Brown, Geneva, Ohio, is just recently home, safe and sound from Afghanistan. But today on Memorial Day, I want to tell you about a parent's anguish. 20 years later, I was at the airport in Youngstown, Ohio, to say goodbye to my firstborn son, Sean Patrick O'Neill from Chagrin Falls, Ohio. He had joined the Air Force Reserve and was on his way to Iraq. I was there to see the unit goodbye, and as any parent would do, I immediately found the commanding officer so we could have a colonel-to-colonel talk. We were making small talk, and I was trying to keep from crying because I didn't think that would be the right approach as my son left for war. So I blurted out that my father had earned the Distinguished Flying Cross in World War II. And the colonel looked at me and said, "How did he do that?" And I said, "Well, he was in the flight over the oil fields of Ploesti, very famous unit." And the colonel looked at me and he says, "Sir, everything is going to be all right with your son if you would just look up." And I looked up, and there on the tail of the plane my son was about to embark on were the numbers 773, for indeed my son had joined his grandfather's unit and was going off to war. I was a proud papa. One thing I got to say before I close is, one thing I have carried with me for the 40 years since I've been home from Vietnam is a misperception in my mind that America was not grateful to our generation when we came home. I came home through San Francisco and Seattle and Chicago. I was always in uniform. I was never treated with anything but dignity and respect. And I want to say to every Vietnam veteran in this audience and their families, welcome home. I am proud of you. I want to end with a story I told at the cemetery in Chagrin Falls last year, and my colonel at the VFW Post 1207 said, 2 minutes, Colonel, that's what you got. It's about poppies. Why do we pass out poppies on Memorial Day? Canadian surgeon John McCrae, looking out over his study on a battlefield on May 13th of 1915. The year earlier, the battle had been so fierce, the ground was covered with blood. The soldiers, in many instances, had to be buried where they fell. It was called Flanders Field. And what the colonel saw that spring morning was a sea of red poppies blowing in the wind. And then he wrote the famous poem, In Flanders Field. I'd like to share it with you today. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Thank you all. God bless our veterans and their families, and God bless America.